I'll jump on to a little bit more detail answering some of the questions that were raised earlier. So this was my rather simplified summary, so don't draw too much on how things are connected, because it's not quite technically right, I think, in every respect. But in essence, the summary is what would we be putting in? Solar panels, typically 10 of them for 4 kilowatt, would go on your roof. South facing is best, as we were just discussing. It could also be on the ground mount, so it doesn't have to be exactly south facing, but more southerly the better. So that would be the kind of core of what we install, and we'll talk a bit more about what those are in a second. There'll be optimizers, which I'll talk about in a moment as an option if you've got a shaded roof. That then connects to a little box called an inverter, which basically just converts the electricity from the roof into form compatible with the house and the grid. A battery optionally connects into that as well to provide the charges from the solar and the grid off peak, and supplies the house. And then the EV charger would connect also into your fuse box if you chose that option. So that's kind of separate, and as we'll describe, can use a combination of grid electricity that you pay for and the solar or battery power. And then lastly, we were just talking about it on a couple of minutes ago, this thing called a solar diverter, which I'll explain in a moment, which is another option to help you reduce costs and carbon, which and all of these I'm going to go through individually. So this is just sort of giving you a big picture of what everything is. And at the quote time, depending on options you choose and your scale, Cotswold Energy will sort of make suggestions on the appropriate sizing for each of these things. So on the solar panels, the ones we're proposing to use are, as I mentioned, those be sized based on your size of your roof, its direction, and how much electricity you're using now and in future, potentially, if you were thinking of a heat pump. We've gone as a standard for what's called an all black design. So the left picture, meaning they're all black, which makes them less visually obtrusive than the ones that are sort of shown on the right, which have a more strong pattern look. We felt that was important, particularly given we're going to be potentially having a lot of houses with solar panels. It looks less obtrusive generally. There's a small incremental cost, which is in what I already proposed, the pricing that's there. So that's kind of our standard. Also in the standard is bird netting, which essentially stops our feathered friends going and sleeping under your nice warm solar panels, because it doesn't do them any good, might damage things or cause them to lose efficiency. So that will be standard and it's pretty unobtrusive. The solar panels that Cotswold Energy are using are, I forgot the name of the company now, but they're what we've done is that they're I think it's a South Korean company. What we specifically avoided is there has been some controversy in the press about some of the Chinese manufactured panels coming from areas where they're using forced labor. So we've very specifically made sure we're not using anything that could fall victim to that. The other thing, an option that we would assess if there's some houses that want to look at it, this is primarily for those metal roofed homes on Lower Mill Estate, could potentially use solar film, which basically sticks on the metal roof, which might be interesting from an aesthetics point of view, because it's sort of thinner and less noticeable, but it will have a higher cost and it will use more roof space because it's not quite as efficient. So if you are interested in that, let Cotswold Energy know, and the two organisations will work together to see what we can spec up and give you an idea of what the price would be, to see if there's a sort of good solution that would fit those. I think there's a number of Lower Mill homes with metal roofs. This was brought up earlier, which is a very good point, is if your roof gets shading, maybe you've got a tree in the garden or a chimney that's going to cast a shadow, or bay windows and the roof design that cast shadows through part of the day, then we'll advise fitting what's called optimizers to the system. These are little boxes. They cost a little bit extra per panel. I think it's about £78 a panel extra. And and they go behind the panel, and their job is, well, the issue they're solving is out them. If you get shading on one panel from that tree, let's say, it decreases the output of the entire set of solar panels, which obviously isn't a great thing because you're not going to be generating as much in the way that panels work together. An optimizer effectively just disconnects the panel from that. So it might be that we just propose to fit it to the couple of panels that get shading, or if it's multiple, maybe the whole roof. They have the slight advantage that they also give you more information on how much power every panel is generating rather than the whole roof. The ones we've chosen, I think, have a 25-year warranty, so the same as the panel themselves. The only slight reason you might not want them, other than the cost, is if they were to go wrong, you know, in 15 years' time, you might have some cost of getting somebody to go up on the roof and install them. But they'd certainly be necessary if you've got a lot of shading on your roof to get the maximum output. And as I say, Cotswold Energy will make a suggestion or proposal on that depending on the setup. One of the reasons is some of that their software will tell them, and some you might, when you're looking at your roof and you know it, do you let them know if you think, you remember, oh yeah, there's a tree that gets shading some parts of the year, or a chimney or whatever, and some of that will come from the photographs. Moving on, I mentioned the inverter, the thing that all the panels connect to. So this is a box. It's roughly, the dimensions are on the website, but in terms of choosing where this goes, roughly think of a large microwave oven, but about half the depth, and that would be installed. Typically, the suggested, it's best to go inside, so a garage or an adjacent store, a utility room could go in. It could also go in your loft, and if there's no interior space, it can go outside, and we'll talk about outside installations in a moment, because it kind of connects with the battery as well. That takes us to the battery. So this battery is, like batteries are all familiar with in our mobile phones or in an electric vehicle, just quite large energy stores. The battery or batteries will charge off both your solar panels during the day. So if you have any excess electricity, which you're quite likely to have, on a sunny day when you typically don't use too much power, it will charge off that. They're also intelligent, so the system sort of integrates together, and it will also charge if it thinks it's going to be cost effective off peak electricity. So if you have an off peak tariff, so for my case, I pay 7.5 pence per kilowatt for off peak versus 40p for peak, so it's 5 times cheaper off peak. So filling your battery up on off peak electricity is going to save money. But the bottom is trying to show it also saves you carbon footprint, because off-peak electricity, there's a little green circle is showing, off-peak electricity is nearly always significantly lower carbon footprint than, so it's kind of double reason for doing it. So it's an option you can choose. Cotswold Energy will price it up and will tell you potentially, with and without, how much it's going to cost to deploy and what the payback will be. They'll size it based on your usage and roof on what size of battery. So there are 3 sizes of battery from Give Energy that can be installed, and multiple of those can be installed. So you can more or less have whatever size system makes sense. They can be added later. So if you decide you want more capacity, you can add it later. The one thing of note from a cost point of view is batteries are 0 VAT rated when bought with solar, but if you buy them standalone, you charge VAT, unfortunately, or get charged VAT under the government rules. Normally, and they're size-wise, by the way, think roughly the size of a washing machine, but half the thickness, half the depth is a very rough idea. And that would normally be installed close to the inverter. You have an option. You can ask Cotswold Energy to put either a backup circuit off your fuse box, or just a backup socket or a couple of sockets, so that in the event of a power cut, you can get power from the battery to run maybe your lights or just a couple of things. It won't run the whole home. Here, I don't think it's terribly important. We have pretty reliable electricity in my 20 years here. And more recently, it's got better. If you really want whole home backup, there is a solution now just launched by Give Energy called their all-in-one model. It's a bigger battery that can back up an entire house, but the price and shipping date for that aren't yet out, so it might mean a bit of a delay, but it's available. I'm not sure it'd be really worthwhile, as I say, around here, given our electric's fairly reliable and you can do it. Cables and switches. We've been quite conscious of obviously the aesthetics with lots of us installing it, so we'll be working with Cotswold Energy to make sure that installations are very neat on any external and internal cabling. Things are ducted and hidden away and neat and installed. The control of the system is via the internet, so the inverter itself would normally need to be Wi-Fi connected, so just onto your home Wi-Fi. I think we did have a question earlier from somebody on email, Lawrence, about they didn't have internet normally. So I think it was a second home, whether it can work, whether it works at all if there's no Wi-Fi, or is there an alternative? I wasn't sure what the answer was to that.
Yeah, I did see that, and with the batteries, it can be a bit of an issue for firmware upgrades. And I also think they don't offer the same warranty without access to the online portal where it can be monitored.
Yeah.
If it was just solar, if it's just solar, I don't think it would be an issue. But if you are having a battery, it's quite vital to have an internet connection. But I can confirm the exact details for that.
Yeah, fine. And I think there's a 4G option, although the 4G coverage around here in this area is pretty dire, so it might not work. So
they don't require very much data to be sent at all. Yeah. So it doesn't need to be a particularly good internet connection.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We mentioned outside installation. This we'd recommend inside, particularly if you've got a battery. Inside is better, as batteries don't particularly like very cold conditions. We won't damage them, but they will very cold weather. They won't charge or discharge as well, so you won't get as much savings from them. But if in some houses it maybe you just don't have anywhere you can put them inside, in which case an external installation is possible. We'll design with Cotswold Energy, with the first couple of houses that require this, a kind of bespoke enclosure that makes sure it looks attractive. So, again, we don't want lots of ugly looking stuff on houses around the area. So we'll make sure we just get something designed that encloses it and looks neat. So it's certainly an option. If you have or think you will have an EV or a plug-in hybrid, then obviously an EV charger is a good option. There's a price on the price list on the website to add an EV charger, which includes standard installation being on the house, relatively nearby the equipment. If, as we were discussing earlier, if it needs to be further away from the house, Cotswold Energy can do that. They can arrange to have trenches dug and so forth, but obviously there will be an additional cost depending on how far the dig is and what it's going through. The EV chargers have got a new model from Give Energy. It will charge pretty much any EV or plug-in hybrid, standard Type 2 connector. It'll add about 20 miles of range roughly per hour, which is the sort of industry standard for these things. The reason we've gone for an integrated one with them is, one, you'll be able to see everything on the same portal, and two, it's intelligent, so it does what's called solar diversion. So it will smartly go, you've got excess electricity in the day, you're generating more than you're using, I'll charge the car now, and when you haven't got excess, it'll defer that and go, well, I'll charge the car, I'll finish the charge on off-peak electricity at night when you're only paying a fraction of the peak, to try and reduce your running costs with an EV, which is worthwhile. I have an EV. I think about nearly half of my electricity usage in the year is from the car, and nearly all of that is off-peak, so it's quite cheap, and it will get cheaper still with this. The other thing of note, for example, if you rent your house out, you can control access to the charger via your app, via the portal. You can optionally also give an RFID card to say a rental guest, so that you can control, people can't basically steal your electricity to charge their car for free if you don't want them to. And you could, if you really wanted, look at the app and work out and say, oh, somebody has used this much electricity on the EV charger in the week they've been there, and charge them at agreed rate. So that would be a possibility for those that rent out. This was also talked about earlier, and you made a very good point that this is also a really useful part. It's an option, so it's what's called a solar diverter. We'll be using the My Energy Eddy, I think is the standard for our cases, as Give Energy don't currently have their own diverter as yet. What it does, the output of it, the reason you'd have it is it saves you money and it saves you carbon footprint. And what it's doing is it's looking at your solar system intelligently, excess electricity, rather than selling it to the grid at very little money. I'll use it to heat the hot water system, so it'll turn the immersion in and heat your hot water up, whether that's hot water for your taps, your heating, a hot tub, as I think was mentioned as another example. It will essentially heat the water up. In the conception, you could think of it as using your hot water as a sort of form of energy store or a battery, and charge it off your free free solar energy, rather than using grid energy at much higher costs. So it helps you save money and carbon again. So that's another option. You can just say, can you include that, and give them a little bit of information, and Cotswold Energy will quote for one of these as well. The last sort of viable component is smart plugs. So Give Energy do have smart plugs, which you can buy. You can actually just buy these off Amazon. The interest of all them is they integrate with the system. So if you want to know how much energy our particular appliances or devices, anything that's plugged in, is using, it will show you in your portal. We'll talk about in a moment, down to the individual plug level. You can also control things. So if you want to turn lights on and off that are plugged into it, you can control them. And they also integrate with smart home stuff. So you can do the ask Alexa to go and turn things on and off with a voice command is also possible with this as well. So that's really an option. You can just add that on as you go along. That's more of a sort of retail purchase. But the nice thing, one of the things we liked about Give Energy, it has all these sort of extra components, which gives a nice integrated view. Which takes me to the last point, last part of this. So you can choose how you want to use this system. If you want to go install it, I don't care after that. Leave it alone. That's your choice. If you want to be able to look in and just check what's going on, how much power am I generating, what's the system health, etc., you can do that via either a web portal from Give Energy or the Give Energy app on your mobile or your tablet. Cotswold Energy, if you give them permission, will also have access to the system. So during things like the warranty period, they can check everything's working okay. If there's an issue, is help diagnose and solve problems. The system will also do a lot of, during its setup phase for the first few weeks, I think it'll do quite a lot of measuring things and automatically adjust, so you can see it making those adjustments in there as well. The other advantage of having kind of a common system for us all is we've got this WhatsApp group and so on. We as a community can answer each other's questions and share good ideas and things we've come up with based on experience, because we'll all have the same system. So that was the end. Before I do questions, just a couple of last comments is in terms of more information. There's the Thames Head Energy website. There's a page on that that's quite a long URL, or you just find it in the menu on the home page, which has all the details that I've described here on the web page, described with more details on pricing and warranties and so on. So you can have a look there. You can ask questions. So if you want to ask questions to the sort of community team, either email us on info, or if you've not already joined the WhatsApp group, and ask away there. And then to request a quote, as I mentioned, and ask questions of Cotswold Energy, it's Thames Head at cotswold.energy for kicking off that whole process. So with that, I'll happy to answer questions. I see Fred, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes. Hi, Mike. And just to follow up with you, I've been looking at wind turbines and so forth, and I've spoken to Alan, the CEO for Habitat LME, about the proposal for maybe putting some wind turbines on the estate. It's 550 acres. That was one topic. He said there is some concern, perhaps maybe with bird kills of a large turbine, but also we discussed the possibility. You and I had a few discussions about these wind turbines, and also vertical, smaller wind turbines that could be used in certain locations on some properties and some locations within someone's plot. So that discussion is ongoing, and the other item was that I'd mentioned to him about using the lakes as a means for energy, that they would use for the transfer of energy and heat, which is a very common place.
Yeah, for heat pumps, right? With the matting. Yeah.
Yeah, with the matting. So we're going to have another call or face to face this coming week, in theory, within the next 7 to 10 days, to discuss these things forward. So I don't know if Cotswold Energy would have any wind power expertise that they could speak to us about at all. Lawrence, anything from your side?
It's not something that we've done yet. Not to say we couldn't look into it, but it's heat pumps and solar are our speciality at the moment.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to give you an update on that, Mike.
Yeah, and you loop me in. I'd be interested in joining the conversation, particularly about the one we're definitely looking at. So I'd be interested in talking to you more about was the mat side of for the heat pump. Yeah. And again, a reminder for everybody, if you are interested in it, just register on the website. So that web page that I mentioned with all the scheme info has a registration button just to tell me how much, or tell us how much interest there is.
Sure. Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Mike, it's Duncan again.
Hey, Duncan.
Stupid question time. So I'm just trying to get my head around it. And what prompted it was when you were saying about on the battery, you can have plugs or sockets that you can use in the event of a power cut. So
yeah,
just forgive the rambling. So we've got the panels, we've got the battery, and then obviously we've got mains electricity from our provider. So from a consumption perspective, does the system intelligently select, say, okay, your solar panels are generating electricity, we'll use that for my internet router, powering my, charging my phone, the electric light I've got on, and then at night, does it intelligently say, okay, well, I'm not generating anything from the solar panels, therefore I'll use the battery, and only when the battery's exhausted does it then switch to using the mains?
Yeah, so yes, it does that more on a whole home level. So it's going to look at your whole home usage and try and minimize the cost. So it's sort of smart. I mentioned it learns for the first few weeks, so it looks at your usage and tries to optimize the best, when to charge the battery, when to use solar, when to use the grid. You program it's set up, or Cotswold Energy will set it up with your tariff. So if you have off peak, so yeah, it'll work out what the best lowest.
So in the event of a power cut, and I'm just thinking,
the backup sockets are almost a separate thing. They're kind of sat there as an emergency thing in case you just lose power completely from the mains.
Yeah, and unfortunately we have in this part of the village. I mean, certainly last year we were on generators we lost power for several days.
And they blew up a line, didn't they? Something.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had up and down like the proverbial, for a couple of weeks. And but I was just thinking that obviously where we would put the battery would be in the garage, which is quite away from where our router is, because the thing I'd want to make sure is on, and forget about the washing machine and you know the microwave, is making sure I can use the kettle and the router.
So these systems are really designed to be a consumption aid rather than a backup device. They do have the capability of running a circuit or two just off the power of the inverter. So you can, if you put a kettle and a washing machine on it at the same time, you'd most likely trip it. It's not quite enough power for that. Give Energy, on this slide, it says it's coming out. They are coming out with a 13.5 kilowatt hour all-in-one AC coupled battery, which will have the whole home backup, but it's not quite on the market yet. The only one on the market is the Tesla one, and they've got a waiting list of about a year and a half at the moment. So I believe this should be out in the next few months, hopefully. So that could be an option if you are concerned about power cuts to back up your whole home. But the standard options that we're offering in this project would just be one light and one power circuit that we could integrate as an optional extra.
Okay, it's just obviously if we had a power cut, we've got a battery that's fully charged and the sun's shining. Does that mean I can't use electricity then?
It would be, yeah, it would just be based on, if you do have a power cut, the only output of the inverter is on an EPS plug, which is an emergency power supply, and that's something we'd have to wire into your existing circuitry of your house, or just put in one power socket that you could run a cable for in the event of an emergency. But as I said, these systems are really designed to be just to store the solar or to be charged from the grid at the cheaper rate and then used back in your house, rather than a full backup system.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I appreciate that. In an emergency, you wouldn't want to everything. It's just power.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it just seems a bit daft that if the solar is, you know, middle of the summer, really hot day, the solar panels are generating electricity like whatnot, that then you can't actually, you know, use it unless it was through that one socket that's next to the inverter.
Yeah, it's more of how it interfaces with your existing electrical supply. So anything to back up the whole home, you'd have to run your whole home's power at the origin in and out of a control device that would then link into the battery, and that's not something that these ones are capable of.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think there is an option, right, Lawrence, where you can connect like one circuit. So the lights, for example, off the fuse box could be connected to this. The lights, for example, could be run as opposed to a socket. I think it's a slightly more complex.
Don't think of it as a socket that's available on the inverter. It's more that out of the inverter, we'd run a cable into your existing fuse box and then use that cable to power one, maybe two circuits, depending on what you choose. But again, that's kind of an optional extra, but we can look into that if you were looking to back up a couple of circuits in that case of that power cut.
All right, smashing. Thank you. Cheers, Lawrence.
Cool.
Fiona and Angus, you've got your hand up. Is that?
Thanks. Yeah, Fiona's had to excuse herself. Just to ask about this heat network from the lake again. Thought you were going to mention it a bit. I mean, you did mention it, but not elaborate at all. What is the situation there? Because obviously, if we were going to have a heat pump, it changes the appropriate design for a particular house quite dramatically.
Yeah, honestly, we're quite early on in that. So we've been talking to, as I mentioned, Kenza, who did a feasibility or doing a feasibility study for us. I think was it Fred's help? We were also going to talk to Lower Mill about it. I've been talking to Phoebe at Lower Mill about it because there are a couple of other lakes. So there's some interest in it, but honestly, we're not very far. It's sort of a separate scheme. Partly how much interest, it'll partly also depend on how many people say they're interested in it, because I really don't know, you know, is it a handful of people that were keen on heat pumps, or is there like this? There's lots. I just don't know at the moment. But something we want to do for sure. We just haven't got as far down the road. This is the three pillars we have, which is this, the solar farm, and the heat, are the sort of three things, and they're all at different phases. This is the most advanced. the solar farms just kind of got kicked off with a consultancy network is sort of following behind that.
Yeah, right, okay.
Cool. Any other questions before we wrap up? Because I realise we went a bit over my advertised time. I'm fine to answer questions, I have no problem going over, but I realise I'm using more of your time than I said I would. Everybody. Alison.
Can I ask how efficient just 4 or 5 panels?
Oh, could you get a bit closer to the mic? You're quite faint.
Okay.
It's quite hard to hear you.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Say we had about 5 panels in the garage next to us. I know that won't be enough energy for the house total. Is it worth investing?
So I think the question was about whether it was if you put it on just on a storage or a garage where there wasn't much roof space, was it worth it?
Yes.
I don't know, Lawrence, you got a view? I mean, is there a minimum that it makes sense?
Yeah, I think I spoke to you about this earlier, Mike. We the give energy options only come in a 3.68 and a 5 kilowatt options for inverter sizes. So if you were to only have the available space for 4 or 5 panels, we definitely could provide a solution, but it wouldn't be this brand. We'd have to look into other brands and inverter types. But yeah, there's no reason why we can't design a smaller system and give you a quote based on that.
Okay, and then I think I saw somebody texted a question, which is is Lower Mill looking at putting panels on their spa roof? And the answer is yes, they are. They're getting a roof survey at the moment. So they don't know at the moment whether the roof is strong enough to take it, but Phoebe tells me they're looking at that. But that's kind of that's their thing, separate from our initiative.
Mike, I have a question. This is Hilary.
Oh, hi, Hilary.
Hi. Thanks for all your work on this. It's terrific. So the question is, our parking space is in a grouping with 10 other spaces, 2 of which are visitors' spaces. So we were thinking of reaching out to our neighbours and finding out if they're thinking of joining this scheme and talk to them about if we could perhaps sort of share the cost of getting the power across the road from us to where our parking spaces are. Is that something that, Lawrence, that you would work with us on?
Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we, Lawrence, when we came over to you? I think the short answer is yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd only have to dig the one trench if we were going to do that, and I'm sure we'll find a way to spread that cost, definitely.
Thank you.
It's mainly the digging. The biggest cost of going somewhere is digging stuff up. It's not so much the cable, it's the digging. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. We'd definitely do that where we could.
Thank you.
People have already answered. Anybody? Any other questions before we wrap up? No, or if not, as I say, I'll post a link to the recording of this. So if you want to go back over anything, and obviously there's lots more information there, and contact the Cotswold Energy team on the bottom email to kick off the process if you haven't done already. I think they keep quite busy because obviously we've sort of launched a scheme, so lots of us are all emailing in. So do bear with them if it takes a little while to get back. But that's one of the downsides of our big scheme is it's created lots of interest in a short period of time. But thanks very much, everybody. Speak to you soon.
Mike, I've just got a quick question just before
you
disappear. It's probably one for Lawrence. In terms of maintenance on the equipment, is there any annual maintenance that needs to be considered for the solar panels and the batteries?
Not as such, no. So in normal operation, they don't need any maintenance at all. The panels are self-cleaning. They've got a hydrophobic coating on them, so as they're angled, the rain should clean them sufficiently. It would just be a kind of a reactive maintenance to any breakdown if it did occur, but it's pretty reliable stuff. Usually you're good for best part of a decade before you'd need to touch it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Is that Reg?
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Hey, Reg.
Any knowledge about insurance for the house, etc.? Does it affect that? Do you have to declare it? Obviously you do, as an improvement to the property. Have you any experience of it? Any knowledge of whether it does affect the insurance?
Probably a question of you, Lawrence. I don't know.
Well, we supply you with the MCS certificate, which is what any insurers would want to see for an installation like this. It's best to speak to your insurer individually, but we do provide insurance for the system.
Okay, just out of idle curiosity, I mean, I installed another bathroom and my house insurance went through the roof. That's at home, not a bill. So yeah, because the risk is higher.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can certainly declare it, but I've never heard that it particularly puts insurance premium up to any great degree, as far as I know. But I'm no expert, having not had it yet.
No, as a person who runs several,
yes,
I don't think we're paying a premium for them.
But
it did trigger a question about Lawrence, what's the specific warranty on the inverter? Because our oldest roofs, we probably had them 7 or 8 years. Some of them are on their 3rd inverters.
Is that Solar Edge?
No, I think Solar Edge. I don't think we've had to change a single Solar Edge inverter. I can't remember what we've had various. Well, in total,
warranty's 5 years. I'm just looking at it because I put it on the website for the inverter.
Yeah, you can extend the warranty on the Give Energy to 10 years. I've just seen, but it's 5 years standard on the inverter.
Right, because inverters are we've had a cracked panel out of probably own about 150 panels total. We've had 2 cracked panels, but we've had to change about 10 inverters or more.
Really? Yeah, I guess the inverter would be the first point of failure if there were to be one, but they're becoming more and more reliable now.
A quarter of the value of the system or something like that, typically.
Yeah, I think they're about £1,500. I think I'm just looking at the price list on the website for the inverter.
Are they with the optimizers? Are they all single channel inverters now, or are they double channel like the original ones?
Do you mean the MPPT inputs? How many strings they have on them?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all 2 strings.
2 strings.
Yeah.
So I mean that's relevant for a roof which is basically a ridge roof with an east-facing and predominantly east and predominantly west-facing roof.
Yeah.
Where you could have an equal string on each side.
Mine probably will be that.
Yeah. So there'd be no need for optimizers in that instance. But if we do fit the optimizers, they have a monitoring portal where you can see the production of each individual panel, and then they are warranted themselves as well. The Tego, we use a brand called Tego optimizers, and apologies, I don't know the warranty off the top of my head. Let me just have a quick look.
But was Mike correct when he said that they basically optimize by cutting out a particularly shaded panel?
No, they don't cut out. They let it generate. What they're doing is not. They're bypassing. So you're still getting power from that panel, but you're not pulling everything else down with it.
It doesn't. Don't think of it as bypassing something. It just lets them all perform independently. And they do come, the optimizers have a 25-year warranty on them as well. So that's the lifetime of the panel, at least.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
I had another question, and that is, so we'll be putting the panels on a quite a high roof. It's a 3-story house, and they'll need to be tilted, so they won't be, So what I'm concerned about is whether they'll catch the wind, because it can get quite windy where we are.
Is it a flat roof system?
It's it's not flat, but it's a very almost flat roof.
Is it a metal seam roof, or is the actual? Yeah. So with those metal seam roofs, we can they come with special clamps that can clamp onto those seams. That would be the initial choice. I mean, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the exact pitch of the roof, but but if it is what I'm thinking of, then it does affix to a certain torque setting on those ridges, which should be sufficient. Well, it will be sufficient and guaranteed to not have a wind issue. If it is a flat roof, we have special mounting kit with wind deflectors and ballast that is calculated to the exact height and wind conditions to expect, and that's all guaranteed under the MCS certificate as well.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions? No, if not, well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time and lots of questions, which shows lots of interest. So look forward to well, joining you. I've got my quote in, so looking forward to joining you in the community power. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any
Mike,
other questions, just send it
Alison's
through to that email.
Yeah.
Looks like
Brilliant.
Alison's got her hand up. Alison.
There is one hand up, Mike.
Oh, is that Alison? Oh yeah, Alison.
No, I haven't. I just can't turn it off.
Ah, right. Okay, no worries. Oh yeah, we spoke earlier, didn't we? But thanks for pointing that out, everybody. Cool. All right, as Lawrence said, yeah, if you've got any questions, fire us through, whether they're general ones about the scheme, the community energy champions will answer it, or if it's more technical about the installation, Lawrence and the household energy team will answer it as well. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.